Hello, One Talk. Welcome to the Unicorn Emprise podcast, the podcast for PNG entrepreneurs earning 0 to 1 million kina in revenue in formal business who want financial clarity, business structure, and tax confidence. I'm your host, Vanessa Geita, a registered public accountant, founder of Hello Taxman, a CPA, and a content creator here in Papua New Guinea. If you caught our previous episode number 3 last fortnight, you'll remember that we talked about the number one negative tax belief to unlearn in your life right now. Today, we will be building on that foundation by exploring and diving deep into the 3 buckets of tax debt or dinao and identifying which one of them 3 you are currently in right now in your life today and how you can start getting out of the negative ones. By the end of this episode, you'll be able to identify which of the 3 tax debt buckets you are currently in and how you can get out of them so that you can move towards less tax debt in your life and more money in your pocket. Before we get into those 3 buckets, let's quickly remind ourselves why this matters, okay? Your tax beliefs, they affect your emotions, and your emotions affect your behavior, and your behavior dictates the outcomes in your life. In this episode, this basic life principle is going to be applied in your tax debt situation. So let's understand this tax debt thing I'm talking about, dinao, if you prefer in pidgin. We will break them down. So there are 3 tax debt buckets. Bucket number 1 is tax liability. Bucket number 2 is tax illiteracy. And bucket number 3 is tax ignorance. So the first bucket, tax liability, is actually the safest place to be. Now, you know that saying, they say you can't escape tax or death. So yeah, we can't escape it. But if you're in bucket number 1, tax liability, that's the safest place to be. Tax liability is where you know exactly how much tax debt you're in. So if you're employed, you see this number clearly on your payslip. When you're buying goods and services that you consume, you can see a tax number on the receipts and invoices from the places that you buy from. So you can see, you know exactly how much taxes you are paying. If you are an informal or unregistered SME owner, so small, medium enterprise owner, you see the amount on your purchases that you make for your table market, kind of like GST and other indirect taxes, government levies, all of that kind of thing. If you're a formal business owner, you track this tax liability amount in your financial statements. So you're doing accounting, bookkeeping, you're at a level of financial literacy where you know and you can track and be confident about how much tax your business owes at what point in time, and you're managing the cash flow to meet that tax debt. So for formal business owners, to be in the safest bucket of tax, you would actually have to have accurate financial reports. If you don't have accurate financial reports, you might fall into one of the next 2 buckets that we'll discuss. Now, even though this is the safest tax debt bucket to be in, there's still room for improvement. If you are an employee, you can choose employers who allow you to package your salary in tax-effective ways. Or you can increase your tax education to potentially become a formal SME owner and eventually offer salary packaging to your employees. If you're an informal SME operator, you can increase your tax education and literacy to become a formal SME owner or operator. And if you are already a formal business owner, small to medium business, you can continue to increase your tax education to implement tax reducing systems in your business. So the key advantage of being in this tax liability bucket is awareness. So you know where you stand, but ideally you want to avoid falling into the next 2 buckets that we will discuss. So tax bucket number 2 is that tax illiteracy bucket. And this is where you are not sure of how much tax debt you're in, but at least you're curious. It bothers you some. So let's break that down to what it looks like for different people, and you can identify where you're at. Firstly, if you are an employee in this tax bucket of tax illiteracy, you don't track your personal spending on the things that you do out of your heart for your community that might have some form of tax tied to them. Secondly, if you're an informal or unregistered SME operator, you don't keep track of how much indirect taxes you are paying to operate your table market. And here is where it gets dangerous. When you operate outside of the tax rules, you actually increase your tax debt risk because the tax law punishes those of us who don't follow the rules, and they punish us with monetary penalties and fines. They're there. So if you're caught, this leads to dealing with the financial trauma tied to the experience of dealing with tax penalties and fines and outstanding taxes, backdated taxes, and you end up living with this unknown tax debt hanging over your head like a storm cloud. Like you don't know. You don't know when the tax man will strike you like lightning, or maybe if you want to imagine the taxman like Thor is gonna strike down with that hammer and dong your head, and you will be like that in the cartoons when you got stars, like someone bumps their head and then they're counting stars over the head, circling their head. That kind of imagery. That could be you if you're in the tax illiteracy bucket, living in fear of the tax man. Okay, so if you are a formal business owner in this bucket, you likely have inaccurate or outstanding bookkeeping and tax compliance responsibilities. Like you've been continuously procrastinating this side of business in your business. So your finance function doesn't exist, or if it does exist, it's just all over the place, a huge mess. And because of that, you face similar risks as the informal SME operators. So there's risks of penalties, financial stress, and that dark cloud of unknown tax debt that follows you everywhere you go. Like, if Mr. Taxman, the government, the IRC comes and strikes you down, you bike it time. But you're still procrastinating. But there is very, very big room for improvement if you find yourself in this bucket, okay? Do not be too downhearted about these things. The fact that you're listening this far means that you are looking at improving, and that's all that matters. As long as you are aware and then you start taking action, you'll be good. The solution is clear. You must increase your tax education and literacy to become a formal SME operator who can implement tax-reducing strategies in your business. Strategies simply means systems. So big words, but it's just a system. Okay, which the most common basic system to reduce taxes is doing bookkeeping. And trust me, you want to completely stay out of the next bucket. It is the most expensive tax bucket you could ever find yourself in. And that is bucket number 3, tax ignorance. The third and most dangerous bucket of all. And this is where you don't care how much tax debt you're in. The people in this bucket, they spend a lot of time moaning and groaning about how terrible the government is with tax money, how they should have used taxpayers' funds to benefit the people, and they go on and endlessly on about the level of corruption. Well, these are realities, okay? But if you just keep spending time just moaning and groaning about it and not doing anything within your power that you can do to reduce taxes legally in your life, then you are in this tax ignorance bucket. And the truth is, tax ignorance is more expensive than paying taxes. What could happen if you used your precious time to increase your tax education and literacy to fight corruption instead of endlessly complaining about it? Okay? It's all about energy, managing energy. Where's your energy going to? So that's the question I want you to seriously consider if you identify with complaining a lot. Your complaining is not irrelevant. It is true. But if all you do is complain instead of looking at getting tax education and becoming tax literate enough to reduce the taxes that you pay in your life, then there's a red flag there. Okay, now that you understand the three buckets, the good news is that you can move towards less tax debt and more pocket money. The key is understanding that tax law favors formal business over employment and informal business. It is totally possible to learn about and apply tax law as you increase your tax education and literacy. So, see, those are two different things. Tax education teaches you about tax advantages. So, after you get educated, then you can become literate. So, tax literacy is your superpower to apply your education in your life for your benefit. So imagine what that could mean for you and your family, your community, this country. If your purpose involves adding value to this nation, your community, your family, yourself, tax education and literacy is very worthwhile. If you value building and passing generational wealth in all possible forms, not just monetary, tax education, tax literacy is very, very worthwhile. And if your beliefs are focused on the positive outcomes of taxation in your life, which is legally reducing taxes in your life through formal business, then getting tax educated and becoming tax literate are very worthwhile. So, what steps can you take based on which bucket you're in? If you are in the tax liability bucket, continue staying there. Just stay there. Track your tax payments, look for legal ways to reduce them. If you are employed, explore salary packaging options with your employer or choose employers who offer this. If you are in an informal business, increase your tax education so that you can become tax literate enough to transition into a formal business where tax advantages are greater. And finally, if you're in the tax illiteracy bucket, you got to start educating yourself about tax laws that apply in your situation. This is especially true for formal business owners. Consider getting tax educated via my podcast or with other tax professionals, reading the IRC website, learning about proper bookkeeping so you can bring your affairs up to date in compliance and thus get more tax confident. And finally, if you're in the tax ignorance bucket, the most dangerous one of all, acknowledge it and start shifting your focus or your energy from complaining to learning. Then you can set a goal to move into the tax literacy bucket within a specific time frame. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with 3 positive tax beliefs that you can install into your psychology, regardless of whichever tax debt bucket you are in. And the 3 of them are: number 1, tax law is a guide for you to legally reduce tax on your hard-earned income. Number 2, you earn more when you learn more about tax benefits. And lastly, number 3, playing by the tax rules leads to growing generational wealth. These beliefs open up the door for you to embrace tax education and become a tax literate entrepreneur. In that way, you can fight corruption and start building generational wealth via profitable formal business ventures. And it brings us to the question of the day. After listening to this episode, which tax debt bucket do you think you're currently in? And what's one step you can take this week onwards to move towards less tax debt? I mean, I can ask you to share in the comments, but it's a bit personal. So think about it and subscribe to this podcast for starters to continue this tax journey with me. All right, One Talk, and that's all for now. I'm your host, Vanessa Geita, and join me again next time on the Unicorn Enterprise podcast.